This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, MICHAEL COVEL. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. I just love that Ginger Rogers clip. I've played it so many times, but I love it. She's so damn cute. When is that? 1928, 29, 1930? If you've not seen the video with Ginger Rogers singing that song that I just played, that clip, go watch. Go watch it on YouTube. And if you think I'm crazy for falling in love with her, what, closing in on 100 years later? I guess we all have our issues. But I just love her. That's the bottom line. I just love her. Today, not unlike my episode with Milton Friedman a few weeks ago, Phil Donahue reappears. Phil Donahue and Ayn Rand. Two episodes that I've curated down that really give Rand a chance to shine. Her logic and her reason on full display. Now, these were recorded sometime in the late 1970s. Her way of thinking, timeless, never goes stale. I love how she positions the universities as villains, especially in this day and age of snowflakes and cupcakes and every other piece of millennial nonsense that's being taught across campuses. Safe spaces, safe houses, safe underwear. These kids are freaking brain dead. So I love that Rand is not PC. This petite woman with a Russian accent, so un-PC, you just gotta love her. Fair warning also, I don't think I cut out everything, but Rand is controversial on these clips with Donahue. And given that what she says, and I've already said she's not PC, some people might be offended. But take what Rand says that you can agree with and put to the side what you can't agree with, but you're still better off for having her way of thinking in your mind, like an infection just stuck there, a splinter in your mind that won't go away. People can make fun of Ayn Rand. They can say she's for teenagers and all that other kind of nonsense, but at her root, she is spot on accurate. How she figured out in the Fountainhead and how she figured out in Atlas Shrugged to be so damn accurate. If anyone had a crystal ball, she had it.
You don't go for altruism and charity and do good and liberal and...
No. And conservative. You might as well add it all.
You don't like the conservatives either?
No.
Well,
not today's conservatives.
All right. I want to help people. I want to do good for other people. What's so bad about that?
Nothing. If you do it by your own choice, and if it's not your primary aim in life, and if you don't regard it as a moral virtue, on those conditions, it's fine to help people if you want to.
Why can't I think of it as a moral virtue? I mean, can't I take some vows for myself for doing all these good things?
Because that would be cannibalism. Because that would mean that you preach altruism, which means not merely kindness, but self-sacrifice. It means that you place the welfare of others above your own, that you live for others, for the sake of helping them, and that justifies your life. That's immoral, according to my morality.
I don't understand why you have to be so harsh in your evaluation of those people. Why call it immoral? Why don't you just say, why don't you say it's a waste of time? Why pass judgment on me?
Because look at the state of the world today.
Yeah.
And you cannot be harsh enough on those who created it. And those who created it are the philosophers of altruism. It's those who preach self-sacrifice, selflessness, self-abnegation, all the anti-self theories, which means anti-man. All those who demand man's sacrifice, they have succeeded, and look at the results in the world.
That's a theory or a way of life or a philosophic idea which is which is advanced by religions, that we should sacrifice for others.
That's right.
All right, I want to make sure I understand you, Miss Rand. Why is it so... I'm still not quite sure why you're so harsh on those who would sacrifice for other people.
Because I look at them. Just look at them. Because they don't hesitate to sacrifice whole nations. Look at Russia. Communism is based on altruism. Look at Nazi Germany. The Nazis were more explicit than even the Russians in preaching self-sacrifice and altruism, and self-sacrifice for the state, for the folk, the people. Every dictatorship is based on altruism. Now you can't fight it by merely saying it's a difference of opinion. It's a difference of life and death.
So your view is then, if we all became more comfortable with our natural tendencies, that is to say, selfishness, there would be less horror, less war, less Hitler?
There wouldn't be any.
So the more selfish we are, the more kind, the more tranquil and peaceful the world in which we live?
And more benevolent toward other people, if we're rationally selfish. By that I mean a selfishness which can justify one's every action rationally, not the kind of whim worship, as I call it, which consists of just indulging your own desires and urges of the moment, and there is no innate natural idea, you know.
There isn't, huh?
No.
Well, I have a lot of innate tendencies.
You think they're innate. You know what I would say? Check your premises.
Check my premises?
Yeah. Check the basic ideas behind any feelings that you might feel at the moment, and you'll see that your feeling comes from your premises. Good or bad, but they held subconsciously, they will direct your feelings, and you will think it's innate, right, but it isn't.
How do you avoid, let's take your thesis then and accept it now. I'm going to be selfish. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be real talented and charismatic, and I'm going to develop a lot of wealth, and I'm going to have a lot of money and a lot of banks, and pretty soon nobody's going to be able to compete with me because I've already purchased all my competitors. And now I have dictatorial power over people, and I can name the price of bacon or price of oil or whatever it is, the commodity I'm selling.
You know, I agree with you that you're very talented and you could accomplish a great deal and already have, but you're talking about the impossible. In a free society, nobody can become a monopolist or a dictator. The system itself, the free market, will destroy you.
How do you explain Mobil Oil, Exxon? How do you explain the prices that they're able to charge for?
I think that they're stupid appeasers who get too little and put up with too much.
Who, the oil companies?
Yes.
You
now, yes, here you have to let me explain.
All right.
If President Carter's own policy admits that we need the oil company and that the lack of oil is a serious national crisis, right, which might lead to the stoppage of all industry. If that is what we need, by what right can we tell those men, go ahead and produce what we want, while we're insulting you, while we're trying to control your business, and while we're not leaving you that which you produced? Today, it's crudely obvious if we need the oil companies, we have only one of two choices. Either we produce oil ourselves, and no government has ever done it or can do it, or we have to accept the oil companies' terms, pay them whatever they can get. The more they get, the more credit to them, because that means the country needs it and pays them. They have produced something needed by the people. And we must say thank you instead of putting or proposing to put a tax on them in order to give the money to the government who does nothing. The government doesn't contribute anything except impediments.
All right. But if we allow the oil companies to have the power which you say has come to them because we need the oil, it's a question of supply and demand.
Yes.
So if we approach this laissez-faire, as I think you would like us to, free of government intervention, right, free of all the force and the regulation and the controls which you abhor.
Right.
All right. Now we've got Mr. Gigantic Oil Baron saying, $2.50 a barrel, a gallon. Now, here's what happens. The guy, the blue-collar guy who's trying to make a living and feed his kids, can't buy gas for his truck, can't possibly survive in the free marketplace, and suddenly he's on welfare, and he's got to go for a handout, another feature of government that you abhor. You can't have it both ways.
But all this is economic fallacies. To begin with, nobody in a free society, now we're talking about a free market, in which the government doesn't interfere, nobody can become a monopolist. All monopolies are created by a special privilege for government. It's only by an act of government that you can keep competitors out of your field. Therefore, you couldn't become that kind of monopoly. The power you hold as an industrialist is not the power to use force. It's the power of producing something of value.
That people want.
And it's the people who literally control you, because every purchase is a vote in the favor of some businessmen and in a way against others. It's the public who decides what they want to buy and what they pass up. If, using your examples, you became this powerful tycoon economically, but you can, as an industrialist, it's not the power to use force. It's the power of producing something of value.
That people want.
And it's the people who literally control you, because every purchase is a vote in the favor of some businessmen and in a way against others. It's the public who decides what they want to buy and what they pass up. If, using your examples, you became this powerful tycoon economically, but you cannot force anybody to deal with you, and you cannot force competitors out of your field, then every smaller man would be in that field, because you would have established a price way above the market. You might last a month, if that.
So, in other words, if I tried to be Mr. Big and charge outrageously high prices for gasoline, I would go broke, in your view, because in your leave them alone and let competition handle it approach to civilization, somebody with a better mousetrap, pardon my mixed metaphor.
No, that's a very good one.
All right, would come along and undercut me.
That's right.
Sell at a cheaper price.
But isn't just my view.
You know what I'll do? I'll buy him up the minute I see this bird. I'll buy him. I'll own him on Tuesday.
And where will you get your money when you're not allowed?
I'm already holding them up for $2.50 a gallon.
But they're not paying you. You say they're all going out of business.
They've got to get to work. We're married to a petroleum civilization.
All right. This has been done, you know. It isn't, incidentally, just my view. That is history. There are people who have tried to corner the market repeatedly, and the result was that they went broke.
Let me see if I understand you now. How do you see if this has got it? You're saying, in effect, that the oil companies have this power because we gave it to them. We gave it to them with our large cars that need a lot of gasoline. We gave it to them with our wasteful practices of energy. We have such a tremendous demand and need and reliance on oil that we, in effect, have given the people who produce the oil the power over us.
No.
Tell me where that's wrong.
Because the oil producers are not the only people whom we patronize, and not the only people who supply a need. Even if, which I say if, it never happens, but let's suppose one oil man cornered the market, he has competition from every other industry who produce other things which we need. Therefore, we cannot give all the power to one company, even if in a given field we patronize only that company. That company is competing with every other producer. And the moment you charge too much and somebody can give us the same product at a lower price, he'll put you out of business.
Okay. You realize, of course, that your critics suggest that that this is a pie-in-the-sky, unpractical notion that you're offering to us, and that it sounds wonderful as you gather with the intellectuals at some university, but it doesn't work out on the street.
Quite the opposite. It's in the universities that it doesn't work, because all the leftist ideas and all the misrepresentation of capitalism come from leftist liberal professors. The universities are the real villains in the picture.
Okay. All right. You want...
But
okay,
I must make one slight postscript. I don't give a damn about my critics.
You don't, huh?
No. Because I have not heard a good one.
You haven't heard a good one?
No.
Okay.
Someone who would be honest and discuss the issues without misrepresentation.
Let's try and walk into some other areas here in the brief time we have. And this is a little frustrating because I've got a lot of folks out here who want to question you. You do not accept the existence of a God, a divine prime mover, right?
No.
Now, the reason you don't is because you can't prove that such a entity or being or energy exists.
I can't, nor can anyone else. There is no proof.
There is no proof that there is no... so therefore, you've concluded that there isn't one.
That's right.
You can't prove there isn't.
You are never called upon to prove a negative. That's a law of logic.
All right. Why can't we have you say, Mr. Donahue, I can't prove there's a God, so I just have to take a pass on that one. No comment. I don't know. Why don't you say I don't know rather than I'm sure there isn't?
Because you can't accept, even as a hypothesis, something for which there is no evidence. I couldn't say...
I think there's circumstantial evidence.
There isn't any.
Oh, this is pretty impressive, huh?
It's magnificent.
No, I mean the universe.
Built by man.
The universe. You've got to be impressed with the universe. When you see order in the universe, this wasn't an accident, Miss Rand.
Oh, now you've got to give me a few minutes. What do you think would happen in a disorderly universe?
In a disorderly universe?
What's the concept of order? What does it have to do with the things which exist? If they clashed with each other, if there were contradictions, they wouldn't exist. There is no such thing as a disorderly universe. Our whole concept of order comes from observing reality. And reality has to be orderly because it's the standard of what exists.
Right. So
the contradictions cannot exist.
Okay, so we have an orderly universe because it's impossible to have a disorderly universe.
That's
I got that. I understood that.
Fine.
Do you understand what a breakthrough that is, that I understood that?
Oh,
all right, now, having accepted that, I still don't understand why can't you just leave the door open? Why do you have to be so unforgiving and so final and so, don't talk to me about it, you can't prove it, and anybody who goes around believing it is wasting time? Okay, we'll get out there and we'll give you that chance in a moment.
He's quite right.
Yeah, he thinks God can be proved. But
that's right, and shouldn't be.
Okay, yes.
But the real issue here, as far as man is concerned, is that when you accept such an important issue as the creation of the universe, on faith, you're destroying your confidence and the validity of your own mind. It has to be either reason or faith. I am against God for the reason that I don't want to destroy reason. I don't...
Give us a chance, all right? We appreciate your zeal, but if you continue that, it's going to make it difficult for the other people to absorb what's going on here.
He says, how can I be against God? I'm against those who conceived that idea.
Tell us why. Tell us why.
Because then it gives man permission to function irrationally, to accept something above and outside the power of their reason and superior to reason. And
what's so bad about that? Why can't I be a reasonable philosopher walking around wondering what it's all about, struggling, striving, trying to understand, enjoying the quest and the journey, and then in the last little part of my consciousness I say, I know you're there somewhere. I don't understand why you did it this way, but I'm certainly can't wait to die and find out.
Because that...
Tell me, I'm not grandstanding. Do you understand that?
Are you?
I'm not trying to be cute now. I'm honestly trying to understand, and I know that it's easy to step on a person of your controversial view and wave a flag, and I don't want to do that.
No,
but do you appreciate the question? Do you understand why are those two things not possible?
Yes, you said it, I think, unintentionally. You said, so I can't wait to die and find out. That, I'm serious, is one of the results of acting on faith. You can't wait to get out of this life.
And what's wrong with that?
Because this life is wonderful, as you said. Because If you look at the universe, it's wonderful. And you have to use your life to the best of your understanding. If you go by emotions, not reason, it means you're going against reality. Something exists, something is right, and you say, no, I don't like it, because I want to believe something else.
I see.
You, in effect, go by emotions, by your whims, not by reason.
And religion or the God concept or faith or worship has people thinking of life as a veil of tears through which you
That's
will
right.
probably not get without falling. You are essentially an evil person who is bent toward...
Well, most religions do preach just that.
And you don't believe that?
God, no.
You think that life should be a celebration?
Yes.
We're lucky to be here? We should be happy to be
We
here.
cannot be
Okay,
lucky,
all right.
because if we
All
weren't
right.
here, we wouldn't be.
Must be a celebration?
Yes.
We're lucky to be here? We should be happy to be here.
We cannot be
Okay,
lucky,
all right.
because if we
All
weren't
right.
here, we wouldn't be. There's no such
Right,
thing
okay, so
as-
it's not a crap game that we're
Exactly.
here. We are here, and we should celebrate it, use it, enjoy it, be selfish.
Right.
There's a virtue in selfishness.
Right.
And we got ourselves in trouble when we started using government to force us to be good, because we had this notion that we had a sort of bad nature.
Right. And if we have a bad nature, we have no self-esteem. If we have no self-esteem, any demagogue can have us. He can order us about, because we wouldn't consider ourselves valuable enough
Yeah.
to be free. You will be anxious to follow anyone because you don't trust yourself.
Right.
So that self-esteem is a precondition of freedom.
All right, so you're obviously against forced government anything. Busing, right?
Oh, certainly.
You're against taxes, forced taxation?
That would be the last reform that I would advocate.
But you don't really think it's going to be possible to have a community of men without forced mandated taxes?
No, I wrote it, and I won't go into details, about an alternative, which would be voluntary taxation. Voluntary contributions to the government, because we need the government.
Do you know why they're going, because they don't think it won't work?
Oh, not if you had to contribute 90% or even 50% of your income. That wouldn't work. But the government doesn't cost that much. The government's proper function is only to protect your rights. And that means to protect men from those who initiate force. So the government protects the peace, internal peace. That means the policemen. The government runs the army and navy, protection from outside forces, and law courts, so that citizens who disagree can settle their disputes peacefully. That's the only functions of government.
All right. So you like an individual who stands up, man or woman, does what he, she wants to do. You have literally liberated
Right.
millions of people around the world by merely saying to them in your novels, you want to do it? Do it.
That's exactly, that's true. And if I help them, I'm delighted. But I didn't.
Original sin sure takes a beating in your writings, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, yes.
Yeah. You don't think that we're born with sin on us?
Do you? I have never met a person who really could believe that.
Well, but see, if
Can
you
you
fool
believe
around
it?
with original sin, there goes the whole idea of Christianity. If there is no
Not
original...
really.
Wait a minute. If there's no original sin, then what do we need Calvary? Why do we need the crucifixion? From what are we redeemed?
Well, but that is the most important thing. Look, if you take Jesus Christ as an ideal human being,
Yeah.
and that is properly the view of Christians, what do you do with your ideal being? You put him on the cross, you torture him and murder him for the sake of those who are less virtuous. Is that a proper example to set?
For the sake of those who are less virtuous.
Yeah, for the sinners, to redeem their sins, as you say.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a monstrous idea. If I were a Christian, I would resent it enormously. The ideal men are to be appreciated and followed.
And listened to.
And listened to,
But
not crucified.
But our evil nature makes us rebel against those who would bring us.
Oh, that's a nice excuse, you know. If you commit a murder and then say, but I am evil by nature, I couldn't help
The
it.
devil made me do it.
Yeah. Incidentally, my philosophy includes free will.
It does.
That you have the choice Only free will consists of your capacity to think or not.
Okay.
If you think, you made the right choice. If you evade, that's the mortal sin according to my philosophy.
You were born in Russia, were you?
Yes.
Leningrad, what is now Leningrad.
Yeah.
You graduated from the University of Leningrad.
That's right.
You recently celebrated your 50th wedding anniversary to the
That's right.
same man.
That's right.
Miss Rand, in your novels, you portray very strong women. I was wondering why you think in the world we don't have strong women leaders.
Because if you're speaking about women's liberation, that whole movement, it's a very false and phony issue. Women are human beings, so they need leaders just like men in certain professions. If in their own profession they don't need leaders, but let's say in politics, they need leaders who are men or women as the leaders have earned. There is no such thing as specifically a leader of women, just as it would be ridiculous to say you have leaders of only men.
Well, but the point is that women feel, because of the cultural inhibitors that have been placed on women, some sort of woman leadership is needed to compensate and to break those barriers and to make good all the grievances of the past.
You can do it only by education. If women feel that there is prejudice against them,
yes,
you do it by spreading the right idea that women intellectually are not the inferior of men.
Of course not, but
physically they certainly
that's
are.
what feminists are doing. They're standing up and educating.
No, they're asking for government power and government handouts. They go around depriving men of jobs because you have to have quota of so many women.
But their point is that they have been denied jobs all these years, so let's get at it and start swinging
You
for
do
it.
not fight an evil if they think they're victims. I don't. But let us say, assuming that women have been treated unfairly, you don't fight an evil by adopting it and practicing
Well,
it.
what should they do? Be nice little girls and not say anything and stay home and break bread?
No.
Well, what should they do? Should
Go into any career of their choice except longshoremen or professional football player, as they're trying today, and fight for their career as every man has to fight.
Would you fight for anything?
How did I get here?
I'm disappointed, though, that here we have all this, you don't deny that there have been grievances. You don't deny sexism. You don't deny prejudice against women.
I deny all that except unequal wages. There have been
You're telling me you think
jobs.
women have had the same opportunities, that they haven't been given blinders by a culture that said they should be a nurse instead of a doctor?
No.
That they should be long-suffering and nurturing instead of a composer?
Not in this country. If you're talking about Europe, it might be different. Here, you can get anything regardless of your sex, because all you have to do is show your ability. And if someone is prejudiced and doesn't hire you, the intelligent employer will.
Over here.
I want to change the topic and go back to something you said about industry. 15 years ago, I was impressed with your books, and I sort of felt that your philosophy was proper. Today, however, I'm more educated, and I find that if a company...
This is what I don't answer.
Well, wait a minute. You haven't heard the question yet.
She's already estimated her position and my work, incidentally, displaying the quality of her brain. If she says today she is more educated...
I am more educated now than I was 15 years ago when I was in high school,
then,
before I went to college,
I'm
and
not
before I read the
interested in your
newspapers.
biography.
Let her make her point.
Context.
Let her make her point. Let her make her point.
It's very basic. If a company is permitted to do what it wants to do, like ITT, you wind up with ITT in Nazi Germany doing whatever it damn well please, and any other company in the United States doing the same thing. Conglomerates are not monopolies. They can do whatever they want. ITT owns everything, from baking companies to telephone companies to munitions plants. I mean, I really think that's wrong. And I really think that they start...
Miss Rand thinks it's wrong too, but she's saying that it's not government force that's going to correct the problem.
I don't think government force is going to correct the problem either, but...
But she's saying that if we back away and just let this invisible hand, the work and competition and free enterprise happen according to its own inclinations, we're not going to have abuse, and abuse and evil will fall of its own weight.
I don't believe that. I think government force is going to correct the problem either, but
she's saying that if we back away and just let this invisible hand, the work and competition and free enterprise happen according to its own inclinations, we're not going to have abuse, and abuse and evil will fall of its own weight.
I don't believe that. I can't believe it because money is power. And the more money you have, the more power you have.
Can we encourage you to make a contribution to that observation?
I will not answer anyone who is impolite, but to show you...
She wasn't impolite.
I do not sanction impoliteness, and I am not the victim of hippies. But...
Hippies?
That's where it started. The dropping of politeness and of manner.
You're equating someone who disagrees with you with impoliteness. That's not fair.
No. If you didn't... If you didn't interrupt me, I would have demonstrated what I mean. I will, to show you that I'm not evading the question, if anyone else wants to ask the same question politely, I'll be delighted to answer.
Well, there was nothing impolite. You are punishing this woman for the vigor and energy that she brought to the dialogue. And that's not fair to her. This is the kind of woman we spend a long time trying to attract to our television audience. And now you are...
Fine.
Okay, just for this...
Teach her some manners. I will now repeat what she said.
Miss Rand.
She said, I used to agree with you, but now that I'm more educated. What does that mean?
Well, that means she now has a different view. There's nothing personal about that observation. Don't be so sensitive.
I am going to be. I intend to be.
Do you see any reason at all for giving social aid to people as a welfare or if someone is disabled?
You see any reason for social aid, for welfare, for charity?
Only private charity, not through government and not through force, not with tax money. But I want to answer the preceding question. Doesn't anybody want to ask it politely?
Yes. Your question asks this audience to agree with your assessment of the questioner, and I don't think they will. That's the problem.
All of them? Then why do they want to listen to me at all?
All right, does anybody want to ask the... Yes, do you want to... All right, hang on just a moment. Come on, you want to stand?
I'm surprised that someone with the intelligence of Miss Rand can be so emotional in her approach.
I can answer you. I didn't come here to be judged. I came here to answer questions. A question asked in the following form. I used to agree with you, but now that I'm more educated, I don't, is an insult which I cannot sanction. I am not interested in the woman's history. She didn't have to begin it that way, and that's what I want to register my protest against.
Hang on just a moment. How do we keep ITT from developing too much power, or any multinational conglomerate in your world of objectivism?
We don't give them government privileges. All monopolies, such as ITT, is sanctioned by government. It's the government that makes this field a monopoly and forbids the entrance of competitors. All the things that this lady cited as example, I had covered before by simply pointing out that the free market does not produce monopolies and never has in history. If you look at any monopoly, you'll see that it's held in power by an act of government, by government privilege. And what we have today is a mixed economy. It's not capitalism. Okay.
Ms. Rand? In your book, Atlas Shrugged, isn't it true that you gave a blueprint for the world takeover by the Illuminati?
By whom?
The Illuminati.
Who's the Illuminati?
The Illuminati is the international bankers, Rothschild, the Rockefellers, and all the Bilderbergers.
But you think her philosophy then would lead to capitalist control of everything?
Her Atlas Shrugged, she gives an exact blueprint for 8 years of the world takeover, and it's in force right now.
You accept that, Ms. Rand?
Certainly not. To begin with, I never heard of any such conspiracies. Certainly Rockefeller is hardly an example of capitalism, and what Atlas Shrugged gives you is a blueprint for how to be free. If a person feels that he'd rather be enslaved and poor, but not let anyone be successful and rich, well, that's what Atlas Shrugged is against.
I'd like to know your opinion on the United States' foreign policy and what is happening in the Middle East right now.
Right now, I'm not sure we know what's happening. I think that the United States foreign policy has been disgraceful for years, for decades. I would say roughly since the New Deal, and in part even before that. But if you mean whose side should one be on, Israel or the Arabs, I would certainly say Israel because it's the advanced, technological, civilized country amidst a group of almost totally primitive savages who have not changed for years and who are racist and who resist Israel because it's bringing industry and intelligence and modern technology into their stagnation.
Miss Rand,
Over here.
Miss Rand, am I correct? Am I correct to assume that according to your philosophy that you are a perfect being?
I never judge myself that way. I judge myself in the following way. Have I absorbed and practiced all of the principles of behavior which I preach? Then I would say yes, resoundingly.
Over here, Miss Rand. Can you see me? Over here.
Ms. Rand, at this time, are you planning or writing another book?
I'm just planning one.
Apropos your atheism, how do you account about the millions of people in the Christian religion who have validated the philosophies that God is alive?
Who validated them? By what? By behaving, by doing good works? And
by the doctors of the church, arguments, by the...
I see. It's this man's position that you can prove, you can validate the existence of God, that it's possible to do that.
It has not been done. The nearest anyone ever came to it was Thomas Aquinas, and he was a very great philosopher, but he could not prove it. Nobody has ever proved it.
In relationship to your atheism, how do you think that ITT and Xerox and General Motors won't overrun the world with their power? Do you believe that there is some powerful good, like 360 degrees, that always has to come back to good?
No.
What do you think is going to make them stop the monopolies or overrun?
The acquisition of more power.
I have already made clear, A, I don't believe that they're evil. B, they don't have the power to run the world. Money is not power in the political sense. You cannot buy control.
But it's power in the practical sense. I mean, if you have to pay $5 a gallon to get to work, $1.50 for a head of lettuce, your children have to eat, they have to be educated. Our system has set it up that you can only get a good education if you're willing to pay for it. So if you want us to be educated...
Not necessarily. I would support the early Americans who educated their own children. And some of the most successful men of the 19th century never went to college. And today, Those who didn't go to college are more intelligent and better informed and less easily fooled than the people who did go to college.
I assume you're against compulsory education.
Pardon?
You're against compulsory education, I'm
yes.
sure.
No.
You're against compulsory education, I'm
yes.
sure.
No, I'm against public-funded education, because that's the sure way to create a country of people disposed towards dictatorship, and that's what you're seeing today.
And we'll be back with Ayn Rand in just a moment. We're back with so little time. Listen, there was a Miss Rand. We're with Ayn Rand. Incidentally, her latest book is titled, listen to this, Introduction of Objectivist Epistemology. I should have had this at Notre Dame. I would have impressed all the girls. But it is a rather multisyllabic, high-sounding title, which
it's not a novel.
Right, which speaks to your philosophy of objectivism.
That's right.
I just have one point that I think should be made, Ms. Rand, with time fleeting here. Your characterization of the situation in the Middle East came down rather gratuitously and in a very angry way on the Arabs, and without discussing the merits of either side in a most complicated and painful collision of cultures and peoples in our world. Why couldn't the men, the millions of men, women, and children who are Arab and who find themselves in this desperate conflict and look around wondering where peace will be, why can't they be angry with you for your characterization of them, your slap at them, your roundhouse criticism of them, when you don't seem to be able to tolerate a questioner who suggests that she disagrees with you? Characterization is, you do not accept any criticism unless you level it.
No. I don't resort to terrorism. I don't go around murdering my opponents, innocent women and children. That is what I have against the Arabs. That takes the conflict out of the sphere of civilized conflicts and makes it murderous. And anyone, private citizens, who resort to force is a monster. And that's what makes me condemn and despise them.
Do you believe that there is going to be a day where there's going to be a female in the White House as president? And how do you feel about that?
I wouldn't vote for her.
You would or wouldn't?
Would not.
You would not?
No.
Why not?
For many reasons.
Nice.
I've written an article about that in my former magazine. You'll have to find out my reasons there.
Yes.
The magazine is The Objectivist.
Would you not vote for her because she was a woman, even if she were better qualified than any man?
If we had followed that law, I might.
That low? I think you have a very, very low opinion of women.
Let me answer this. It is not to a woman's personal interest to rule man. It puts her in a very unhappy position. I don't believe that any good woman would want that position.
So you are essentially against leadership positions for women, then?
No. Oh, no. The president is not the only leadership position. There's senators and congressmen and
it's all right for you if they run and be elected?
Oh, certainly, and I vote for them. But, wait a moment, a commander-in-chief of the army, a woman, I think it's unspeakable.
We are in New York City with Ayn Rand, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're back. Yes. Go ahead.
Ms. Rand, I'd like to ask you your opinion of Golda Meir.
My opinion of Golda Meir? Oh, I think she is a very unhappy woman. She was a good leader. I don't agree with her philosophy. She's a socialist. And I think Begin is much better.
I am sorry that our time is up. I'm sorry, there are 1,001 people with questions here that perhaps sometime in the future we'll have an opportunity to share more dialogue with you. It's been my pleasure. It's been an enlightening experience to meet the woman behind the writings that have created such a stir.
I really enjoyed it.
Your latest book is titled Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. Many thanks to you, Ayn Rand. And to you who gathered here in Madison Square Garden, have a nice day, everybody. Goodbye. You're an Aristotelian, you're an Aristotle devotee more than a Plato devotee.
Oh, God, yes.
I'd be happy to tell you why, but we just don't have time. I don't mean to be...
I can tell you in one sentence.
Okay, good. If it's brief.
Because he is a defender, upholder, and advocate of reason. Aristotle, and the father of logic. Plato is the opposite.
Yeah. You don't like altruists.
I disapprove of them. I regard them as evil.
Do-gooders. Lord, save me from the do-gooders.
I don't like those popular expressions. That's too narrow and too political.
Okay, but what's bad about the person who wants to help other people?
Well, to begin with, that's the big mistake. People can want to help other people properly and with very good reasons, but that isn't altruism. Altruism doesn't mean merely helping people. It means sacrificing yourself to others, placing the interests of others above your own. It's the self-sacrificing person who is an altruist.
And what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with committing suicide? What's wrong with giving up life? And why is the happiness of another person important and good, but not your own? Why are you always the outsider and the sacrificial animal? For a good relationship, there should be no victims, no sacrifices.
Okay, so that in a relationship, for example, a man and woman, we'll talk about the heterosexual world for a moment. To sacrifice for your loved one is, in many cases, then a misnomer. What you're really doing is, tell me what you mean.
What I mean by sacrifice, and what is generally meant, is to give up some value which is important to you for something else which is a lesser value or a non-value.
That's
sacrifice.
And you don't approve of that?
No, I don't. Now, if you love your husband or wife and you have to, let us say, select between spending money for your spouse if he's ill or going to a nightclub. It's not a sacrifice to spend money for your spouse if he or she is your value. That is what you want to do.
I see.
But if you let, for instance, your husband die in order to save the neighbor's husband or your wife, that would be altruism. If you reject or pass up something which is, or someone who is valuable to you, and in favor of somebody who is a neutral stranger or even worse, an enemy. If you sacrifice a friend for an enemy, that's altruism. And the issue there is simply watch the hierarchy of values. If something that is important to you requires a great deal of effort from you, that's not sacrifice. But if you give up your career because you want your competitor or rival to be more successful, that would be a hideous and very evil sacrifice.
I'm trying to figure out how this applies to everyday, if you don't, if your wife wants you to go to the A&P and you don't want to go, but you sacrifice because it's for the good of the family, is that okay with you?
Perfectly okay.
But what if you're filled with resentment as you go, wondering how come you're always the...
Oh, well, if that's true that it's unfair, and if it's not your understanding with your husband, but he imposes this on you, then it's perfectly all right to resent it, and properly you should raise the issue and decide what you want to do.
Yeah. Well, I don't understand why this is important. What are the consequences of the traditional notion that we've got here in the Western world that sacrifice is what love is all about?
Do you want the quickest examples that comes to my mind? The newest proposals of having special millions spent on subnormal children and on the handicapped, including those so-called kneeling buses. It's the attempt to bring everybody to the level of the handicapped. And if it's merely an issue of a physical handicap like a broken leg, which doesn't affect the mind, that would be a little more excusable. So I don't believe that such privileges should be granted to any group. But it includes the mentally retarded, which is the subnormal, the children who are unable to learn, so that at the end of spending thousands or millions of taxpayers' money, you're left with a half-idiot who may learn to read and write, may. On the other hand, there are no special schools, or very, very few, for gifted children. And to pass up the gifted, on whom all our lives depend. If it weren't for intelligent people, well, read Atlas Shrugged, what would happen to us without the better mind, who are able to survive and who carry the weight of everybody else? Yet we don't spend any money on them. We do everything.
Well, there's... The applause is for your call for more society energy directed at the accommodation of gifted people.
I hope so.
Okay, but
not government spending. However, so long as you support the ungifted, you owe your first priorities to the gifted.
But what in the Ayn Rand civil context would be appropriate societal measures to accommodate the ungifted?
Their own parents. And a chance to give their parents to earn money. If, however, their parents are poor and cannot assume it, it's a big, heavy burden, then you can appeal to private charity, as it was always done before welfare statism in this country.
You want private charity as well for the gifted?
If necessary. They usually, in a free society, they won't need it. They'll make their own way, just so you don't stop them. But private charity cannot be done by means of tax collection, which means by force. Private charity is up to you, and if it's a worthy cause, that is, let's say, a subnormal child who certainly cannot help it, it's perfectly all right to help him, but not at the sacrifice of your own child.
You'd probably like to get rid of HEW then?
Oh, certainly. Oh, certainly. Much more than that. I'd like to get rid of.
A lot of the government, huh?
Everything except the basic duties of the government, which is police, law courts, armed forces.
You want less government? All right.
Thank you.
Well, everybody says that. It's a little hard to put that into effect when we've got a country that has such a maldistribution of wealth. You give me that, huh? Too few rich, too many poor.
I will give you part of that, because if there is a maldistribution, it's to those who have political pull. If some of your money is made with government help and government favoritism, then I grant you that is unfair and improper and unjust. But if you made it yourself in free competition, enough people want to pay you for your services or your product, then you should keep all of it. Why shouldn't you? You made it.
You're an atheist.
Yes. I could do the same to you, you know.
Why?
Since you're the host, I won't say it, but in other circumstances, I would say I don't approve of religion. I recognize your right to it, but...
You don't approve of religion because?
Because it's mystical, because it's based on faith, not on reason and facts.
So for you, but not for others, okay, what do you care? Somebody wants to worship a Christmas tree or a telephone pole, that's their business.
I wouldn't stop them legally. I said I grant them the right to believe anything they want, but I don't have to approve. And the question was, I would say, you know, at them,
yeah.
But I would never pass any laws to stop them.
Yeah. You've got to allow that you're not smart enough to know whether or not there's a God.
Yes, I am, and everybody here is.
Is what?
Smart enough. That doesn't take much intelligence. You know why?
Why?
Because you're not called upon, I cannot be called upon to know a negative or to prove a negative. If there is a God, and you prove it, that's fine. But you can't tell me you can't know that there isn't. I would say, yes, I know that there isn't because I've been given no evidence.
Well, but the fact that you've been given no evidence may mean you just haven't been in the right place at the right time.
What?
I mean, it may mean that.
No.
No.
It could mean that about somebody else, but not about me.
Right. Okay.
Because I'm interested in
Sure.
this.
I honestly don't want to be theatrical about this, and I'm not suggesting that you haven't been in this dialogue before, but I still have a lot of problems with, I think atheists are as arrogant as many of the so-called Christians or religionists that you decry. I'm saying...
Arrogant in what way?
In that you are here with your certainty saying there is no God, and anybody who believes there is it is almost a suggestion that you're foolish if you believe that there is. And I think that's a little arrogant and condescending if you...
No, I don't call it foolish. I would have, if you want to tell the truth, I think it's a bad sign psychologically. It is a sign of a psychological weakness, of a man who is afraid to stand on his own mind and his own responsibility. Mm-hmm. Because you see, the absence of proof has gone on for centuries. Mm-hmm. Every argument for the existence of God is incomplete, improper, and has been refuted, mm-hmm. and people go on and on because they want to believe. Well, I regard it as evil to place your emotions, your desire, above the evidence of what your mind knows.
Okay, and I regard it as intellectually lazy to look at the universe and to suggest, as you seem to be doing, that this is all some accident.
I didn't say that.
Well, how in the world did we get all this order? Aren't you impressed with that?
No. Because the order is only in good cases in the minds of your scientists who are able to understand some part of it.
Yeah.
But there isn't an artificial order in the universe, and it's not chance. What would be the alternative? Nature. That the universe, and remember, the universe is everything that exists, has always been here. Because you cannot discuss or know anything about what was here before anything existed. A zero.
The question's absurd.
Doesn't exist.
The question is absurd.
That's
what was
right.
here before there was something here?
Exactly.
If there was something here before there was something here, then there was
Right.
something there already.
Exactly.
And then we have to ask what was there first.
That's right.
All right. So all I'm
wait a
asking,
moment.
Miss Rand, is... Excuse me.
One thing. But that's what you're doing with the idea of God, speaking philosophically.
True.
You say you need someone to explain the order, but what will you then have to explain God? You have to take what exists as a fact, and you start with what exists, and you see how much you can learn about it. But
aren't you really filled with wonder when you look up at the stars?
No, and I don't like to look at them. I love this earth. You know when I'm filled with wonder? When I look at skyscrapers, at the man-made, at what men were able to achieve on their own, unaided so-called mind, without the help of faith, desires, or any sort of mysticism.
You know what you see in those skyscrapers?
What?
Lonely people with in baskets and out baskets and dead-end jobs and no creative challenge and bosses who don't appreciate what they're doing and underpaid exploitation on the part of many, many people who go in like cattle, filing into these ecological disasters that let too much heat in the summertime.
You're an ecologist? All right, let me ask you. Would any human being, even a basket case, be better off in Iran or in Soviet Russia?
Oh, well, no, of course not, but maybe...
But wait, but the people who made, what I see when I see the skyscrapers is the men who devised them. The Howard Dork in the Fountainhead. The people who had the ability to bring us that far away from primitive jungles. Now that's the achievement. And observe, in this country, the poorest, most handicapped person is better off than a fully abled man almost everywhere else in the world.
You were born, I should say, just in Tsarist Russia, 19-something.
1905.
You're 75 years old.
That's right.
Thank you. Didn't your family flee the Russian Revolution?
No.
They didn't. You fled in the 20s then. You left in the 20s.
I left in 1926, alone.
All right. Did you leave in fear, or do you have childhood memories of the
In fear of what? Of Russia?
Yeah.
In complete loathing.
Loathing.
For the whole country and including the Tsarist period. It is the ugliest and incidentally most mystical country on earth.
But they're the ones that decry atheism. They're singing your song.
Oh, no.
To the people, huh?
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, decry Christianity. I'm sorry, decry religion is what I meant to say.
No, they really don't. They have a materialistic mysticism of their own. Because if the mystics, the religionist people tell you the mind, well, they don't speak of the mind, but usually the soul is the only thing of value about you, the body is evil.
The Russians
say no. I said the religions say
yes,
that.
They do, yes.
And the Russians will say, no, there isn't such a thing as a soul or a mind. There's only your body. It's materialism. They believe that you're not a man, but a collection of atoms. No, there isn't such a thing as a soul or a mind. There's only your body. It's materialism. They believe that you're not a man, but a collection of atoms.
And give that body to the state for the collective effort of the...
That's right, for the good of the whole and sacrifice to the state. And whoever says it is or wants to be the state.
I was interested in your remarks on special education, and particularly on gifted education. We in the public schools can identify gifted children, we can categorize their strengths and their needs, but we don't have the dollars to do what needs to be done. What, in your opinion, is our society's responsibility to these children who will be our leaders?
To begin with, I don't believe that society has any responsibility towards anyone. Neither the future leaders nor the future victims. Society has nothing to do, properly speaking, with the life of any one person except to keep out of his way and give him a chance. In a proper, that is totally free society, nothing will be done for the gifted except voluntarily. If his parents are poor and the general trend of the society is not towards helping the ungifted, it's not altruistic, then private individuals and free institutions will help him if his parents are poor. But in a free society, predominantly, all that the gifted child needs is some decent, rational education instead of the boredom that makes them give up school today. Because a lot of the gifted children, you know, are dropouts because they're bored in a class devised for less gifted children. And just leave them alone and preach the ideas that human ability is a value.
When you say that society has no responsibility here, I think individuals have a responsibility to themselves. Is that it?
I don't like the word responsibility involved here.
All right, well, what should we say then? Help me. What do I... do what I wish to do. Is that your point? That the more...
No. Do what I rationally think is right, according to the right morality. And help others if you can, but not as a primary obligation. And now, in regard to society, there is no such thing as society, you know. It's all of us. Now, how can we have obligations which we didn't undertake? See, the parents of a child would have obligations for him up to a certain age, since they brought him into the world, but they can't do what is impossible to them. So it doesn't mean that they can at any moment throw the burden on the rest of us. We're society, everybody's society, and we can't have unearned obligations and unchosen obligations.
Yes, Miss Rand, I was one of those people who belonged to your cult where we were devouring your books, and I just wanted to say that as I matured, I am glad that I was able to differentiate with your philosophies.
Did you see our show last year? You want to create an incident?
No.
Pass it up. I'm not a cult.
Okay.
No, all right. No, I didn't mean that. I just meant that we admired your work and still do in many ways. But I'm glad now that as the emphasis today, as everyone talks of the me society, I have different feelings thinking that there are many parts of your philosophies that do emphasize and create another me society.
And what's wrong with that?
Well, I just feel that I know Miss Rand does not like the word responsibility, but as I matured, I became more responsible, I feel, and I realized that there is another world around me other than just myself and my family.
And I don't. And if I didn't, why would I be here or speaking to you at all, and why would I write?
No, I don't disagree with that.
Thank you.
And I realize that, but I also feel that there are so many things that, in many ways, you're trying to create an elitist society, and today that just is not practical.
What has she said that makes you...
If you want to spread your views, in today's society, you have every opportunity, more than you can count. Why come here and take advantage of my show and of people who came here to see and hear me, not the leaders who put responsibility on your shoulder. You want responsibility, go and practice it. But you're not going to force any responsibility on me.
Well,
and certainly not
but she's
for
not.
your
But she
manners.
has to be able to share with you her opinion, however differing it may be from
No.
what you hold. Because I know you don't mean to, and I know we've been here before. Do you feel some sense of deja vu with this?
A little.
When you say that, you sound intolerant of those who would dissent from your position.
No, there is a distinction that has been very intentionally modeled. I do not, and I've said repeatedly, I don't want to interfere with anyone or force anything on them. You have to make those distinctions voluntarily and yourself. The distinction is, let the whole world disagree with me if it wants to. Doesn't mean that if I want to be tolerant, I will change my ideas. I want to hold only my ideas. I don't approve of those who preach the opposite, and I don't think that the freedom to utter nonsense is the first freedom. The freedom is your right to your life.
I don't think you want the responsibility of deciding what in every case is nonsense.
No.
All right.
What my policy is, I don't deal with those who disagree.
All right. Well,
they don't agree, fine. They shouldn't deal with me.
but just think of the fun you're missing. I mean, you're...
That's different. That depends on your idea of fun.
Oh, a good, vigorous exchange of views between two people who care and have differing positions is one of the most instructive things that can happen in a living room or on television.
I would love to see an honorable adversary, but I've stopped hoping for it.
But that's an arrogant position. What you're saying is all those who disagree with me are not honorable. That's what you're saying.
Not honorable in their ideas. I don't judge him personally or psychologically.
Honorable is a judgment. It's the worst kind of
I have
judgment.
to know something about a person's attitude and knowledge in regard to his or her ideas before I say,
Can't give you a psychiatric report on everybody who would disagree with you.
Wait a moment.
But can't we deal with the issues right at the surface? She made a comment that she...
in regard to his or her ideas before I say,
Can't give you a psychiatric report on everybody who would disagree with you.
Wait a moment.
But can't we deal with the issues right at the surface? She made a comment that she disagreed.
You know, I'm not doing it to flatter you, but I think you're a good adversary. You ask intelligent questions, you're sure when you disagree, but you're focused on ideas. So am I.
Oh, so was she. So was she.
No.
She was talking about your ideas, and all she said that she's parted from some of your writings. Hey, show me a person who's universally beloved, and I'll show you a person who isn't doing anything.
No, if she's parted from my writings, that's her loss, not mine. But why announce it to me?
Okay, but this is the kind of... We have to be able to talk about this without rancor, huh?
I don't think I'm very rancorous right now.
No, not yet.
You can't tell.
Okay. Your position is desperately close to the dictator who says, if you disagree with me, you are not honorable, I will not deal with you, and I may send the Savak after you. That's the next thing.
Now that is your...
I wouldn't suggest you would do that. I'm saying this is the beginning of an attitude that...
You mean that if you are opposed to a dictator, you say, well, reality is one thing for you, but it's another thing for me. Let's all be guided by our feelings and not by the evidence of reality.
Okay, the problem with the conversation is you and I would have to both choose a dictator for us to be equally comfortable in discussing it, huh? I mean, your definition of a dictator may be different than mine, or vice versa.
My definition is very simple and objective.
Yeah, what is it?
Anyone who will enforce any idea or prejudice by physical force, anyone who initiates the use of force against another human being, in that instant is acting like a dictator. And if he establishes that as a political system, then that's a dictatorship. But I'm the arch enemy of physical force. I'm for freedom of the mind and for bringing people to your ideas by persuasion, not by force.
Could you bring your moral perceptions and principles to a meeting in 1917, 1920, 22 to assassinate the Tsar?
Why assassinate him? He fell, you know, by a bloodless
but
revolution.
you don't know that. You didn't know that at the time.
Well,
You're armchair quarterbacking now. I'm asking you, in the Dietrich Bonhoeffer sense, could you plot to overthrow a person that you thought was obviously, in your mind, denying civil rights to other people?
Plot against him, certainly. I always said you should. You have the moral right to retaliate with force if someone imposes force on you.
So you're for self-defense?
Oh, yes,
And
but not murder. And that is a profound difference.
But when the underground people in Germany started meeting and saying, let's knock off Hitler, that's morally acceptable.
Oh, totally.
If anyone knows of other great Rand clips, really strong segments where she puts her best out there, drop me a line. I want to feature it on this podcast. And one thing going out for the holidays, and I have mentioned this in a prior episode just about 2 weeks ago, my flagship product, a special holiday discount. New features, new modules. If you'd like to take advantage of that special for a limited time, drop me an email. I'm really easy to reach. Michael@covel.com. That's COVEL.com. And again, if you're sitting there right now as one of those Ayn Rand haters, go do yourself a favor and find out how many captains of industry, how many hedge fund managers, how many VC guys think that Rand had it all figured out. Maybe not all figured out, but that she was onto something. Because I got to tell you, in my lifetime, my short lifetime, I've met so many people inspired by her. And I hope this episode inspires you that if you've not yet read The Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged, dig in. You've only got about 1,700 pages, so you better get started. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.